Our next panel discussion is Balkan World, Building Future and Security Posture Amid Geopolitical Challenges. We have 3 panelists on this panel. Petar Grk, is he here? I don't see him, but maybe that is because of the... Yep, I didn't see you because of the lights. Dobrodošli. Hello, welcome, please. Nikola LUNIĆ, an executive director of the Belgrade-based Council for Strategic. And hi. You're all too quick for me. Please take a seat, and then I will introduce you properly. Our 3 speakers are Petar Grk, National Coordinator for the Western Balkans at Slovenia's Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Secretary General of the Bled Strategic Forum. Nikola LUNIĆ is an Executive Director of the Belgrade-based Council for Strategic Policy, a retired Navy captain who was in defense field for Serbian armed forces. And of course, our 3rd panelist, Kurt Volker, is an advisory board co-chair of BGR Group and a former US ambassador to NATO, bringing decades of transatlantic security experience. Now, why am I talking so quickly? Because our first panelist needs to catch an airplane really soon, and we are late on our program. So if you don't mind, this panel will begin a bit differently. I will ask all the questions first to Petar, and then we will continue with the discussion. I hope you don't mind. Croatian ili lokalni jezik? Whichever you prefer.
English, it's okay.
Okay. Now, recently you said fragmented processes yield fragmented and unjust solutions. You were, of course, talking about the global picture, but this can also apply to the Western Balkans. Now, given the geopolitical challenges, can the region afford not to work more closely with each other?
No.
Okay. Next one. This will be yes or no session of the panel.
No, I think it can't, you know. I was talking, I had some interviews before, and basically, you know, all these questions, I think the mindset of the region needs to change. How? I think, okay, it's a long process. It's 20 years of the enlargement which was not going anywhere. But now I think the change of the mindset with the Russian aggression on Ukraine changed the European Union. Mm-hmm. I don't see right now that this mindset change is also similar in the Western Balkans. Mm. Because the problem is, in the Western Balkans, there are still voices, a lot of voices, who are dealing with the past, with the issues of the past, and there are not a lot of voices which are dealing with the things of the future. So I think, you know, what we need is the political elites to understand that while they are opening the wounds and the issues of the past, the time flies by. And you know how they say, in the meantime, time is mean. So given the geostrategic outlook of Europe, but also other regions, we know what is happening in Ukraine, we know what is happening in Gaza and the Middle East, there is no more time to lose. So, you know, my plea would be for the region and especially the political elites to understand the geostrategic moment that we are facing and actually implement what they have been so diligently saying in the past. To conclude with this, what European Union, I think, needs, because of all the issues and the problems that we have on our plate, we need a voice and action from the region saying and doing, we want to enter the European Union, we want to enter now, and we are going to do everything which is in our power to be ready, by 2030 so that the European Union can enlarge and basically Europe can consolidate. Because it's also in our interest. Consolidated Europe, I think, is the only guarantee that we Europeans are going to matter in the next geostrategic playground. So just to underline, would you say that the lack of political will and unresolved history are the 2 main things keeping the region from achieving this goal you mentioned? Yes.
Yeah, okay. Now, what Ursula von der Leyen at this year's Bled Strategic Forum said is that enlargement must be a full-time job that requires undivided attention. The nomination of Slovenia's Marta Kos as European Commissioner for Enlargement well, candidate at this moment, is seen as a good news throughout Western Balkans because it will keep the region in focus. Do you think this is important, or will it have any influence? Or is it what the region is doing on its EU path more important?
I think, it's important because how Slovenia is positioning itself when it comes to enlargement. It's in our strategic interest, it's in our vital interest, not because we are an altruistic country, but because basically we see that by securing democracy and rule of law in this region, we are securing also European posture which is stable, which is secure, and which can mean something in the wider international arena. So yes, I think it's important that our candidate and that Slovenia got the enlargement portfolio, because we are going to do everything which is in our power to actually keep this process in the focus. But by saying this, let me underline again, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if the Pope would be the enlargement commissioner, if the region and the political elites are not going to do their part of the work. And now, for 20 years, we have been talking about the process which is not clear, nobody knows where it's going. There was, different voices inside the European Union and so on and so on, and you had the region who was observing this closely. But now, and when we are talking, for example, regarding Montenegro, we have a clean slate. We have a process which is clear. We know what Montenegro needs to do, and when Montenegro is going to do that, I think the enlargement process is going to continue. And it's a poetic justice that the next enlargement, and I hope it's going to be with Montenegro, is going to happen during the Slovenian Commissioner for Enlargement.
Even last year, Mr. Lajčák said that at that moment, European Union was more ready for the Western Balkans than the Western Balkans was ready for the European Union. Would you say that the situation is still like that, or has it changed in the last year?
I would say that definitely in the European Union, the appetite for enlargement for, I wouldn't say nice reasons because of the Russian aggression in Ukraine, is much, much stronger than it was in the past. In the past, you had dissident voices from some countries that were reserved, they didn't know how to position themselves, but now even from the countries which have been reserved, you have a strong commitment to enlargement. So I would say European Union is ready. And now, to come back, we need a strong voice from the Western Balkans, that the political elites also
a strong response to this readiness. Now, the growth plan is on track, the financial incentives to those undertaking reforms on the EU path, a carrot rather than a stick approach, as one might say. What short-term results, do you expect some short-term results from this approach?
I mean, this is going to sound funny, but I don't think the growth plan is just about the money. There is this thinking, or at least I heard it by talking to various interlocutors, that entering the single market is going to solve all the issues of the region. The problem is that, economies of the Western Balkans right now are not ready to enter the single market, are not ready. Why they're not ready? Because the rules of the singular market, especially when it comes to the rule of law, are not being observed. So I see the growth plan and everything which is connected to slowly enter into the single market, connected to actually establishing the viable and working and efficient rule of law institutions in the region. So there is no shortcuts. If the countries of the region would like to move closer to the single market with the growth plan, they will need to do their part of the work, and the most important part is the functioning institutions of the rule of law. So we always come back to this issue. You are not going to enter the single market without having a transparent a judiciary, rule of law institutions, which will be able to be resilient when it comes also to foreign influence from countries who not necessarily share the same interest as we do.
And Slovenia is there to help the Western Balkans in the years ahead, I imagine, as it was.
I think, as I said, we have the Commissioner for Enlargement, and we think that the time is now that during this commission the enlargement actually takes place, and we are going to do everything which is in our power to make it happen.
So 2 songs, The Time Is Now and You Have a Friend in Me. Thank you so
Definitely.
much. Thank you so much, Peter, for joining us.
No problem.
I will excuse you
Yes.
now. Hope you will catch your plane.
I will.
And then I will take your seat to be closer to my other panelists.
Thank you very much for the invitation.
Thank you so much. Sretan put. Okay, well, a different kind of panel, but now we have the discussion part of the panel. You're okay with first names? Yes? Sure. Kurt, we've recently seen, now to get on the serious side of things, we've recently seen assessments from US intelligence warning that tensions, especially in Kosovo and Bosnia and Herzegovina, could potentially lead to violence. Now, it's not an easy thing to hear. I live in Sarajevo now, and every couple of weeks, somebody asks me as a journalist, is the war happening again? I mean, people are in this constant kind of tension, especially in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and I cannot imagine that people in Kosovo are relaxed about this issue. How do you view this US intelligence coming to this region?
Well, I wouldn't overemphasize the idea that it's coming from an intelligence assessment. Basically, intelligence is what people pick up and learn and then put a label on. So it's what all of us have lived through. It's what all of us can see. What I would say is that I spent a lot of time in this region in the 1990s when the war was going on, and it was terrible. And I now spend a lot of time dealing with Ukraine, which is just horrific in terms of the numbers of people affected by that. And what it reminds you is that these things are possible. You can't be complacent. You can't just assume that nothing bad is going to happen or that we can control things. You can't. And so we heard some very important messages today already, and I want to compliment the organizers here because this is a great forum. But from the American ambassador this morning, from Miro Lajčák as well, there is, I would argue, a complacency on the part of many leaders here that they can play games with nationalist rhetoric, with ethnic tensions, with little tiny steps that might gain a little political support and poke somebody else. But this is really dangerous because it can get out of hand. So I don't think that there's an imminent movement to violence. I don't think we're going to see, when we walk outside, things happening. But we can't take it for granted that that's never going to happen.
And militarily speaking, is the region complacent, or is it getting ready to be serious about a challenge like
it's
this?
Complacent, and it's complacent for a couple of reasons. One, there are leaders, political leaders, who benefit by playing nationalist and ethnic and religious cards, and they do that even though there's a risk of doing so. And second, they underestimate the intent of some nefarious actors from outside the region who really want to create this kind of disruption. And Russia in particular, I would say not only the Russian state, but the Russian church, they want to destabilize the region because it keeps it out of Europe and it creates opportunities to extend a sphere of influence from Russia. And there are some people in the region who are willing to play ball with that agenda, which is itself very dangerous.
Now, this will be a multilingual panel. I forgot to say in the beginning, so if you have your headphones, this is the time for them. Yes, Nikola, europske zemlje, vidjeli smo u posljednjim mjesecima, značajno povećavaju izdavanja za obranu, za troškove sigurnosti. Kako je stanje u vezi s tim u zemljama Zapadnog Balkana? Evo ono što je vidljivo u javnosti, vrlo su ovi borbeni zrakoplovi koje je nabavila Hrvatska i sada Srbija.
Ako uzmemo u obzir aktualnu globalnu geopolitičku situaciju, onda bi logično bilo da se vojna potrošnja povećava i na Zapadnom Balkanu. Međutim, ne ovoliko i ne u ovakvim obimima. Ja ću navesti i govorit ću pretežno o situaciji u Srbiji, odakle dolazi. Ali se to možda može odnositi na neke druge zapadno-balkanske zemlje. Naime, srpski budžet je procijenjen od Međunarodnog monetarnog fonda iznosi 76 milijardi evra. Formalno, ono što je transparentno, je 1,5 milijarda evra vojni budžet, najava predsjednika Vučića u januaru da će još 730 milijuna evra izdvojiti za nabavke i na kraju kupovina Rafala od kojih prva tranša otplate dolazi u ovoj godini, a to je 421 milijun evra. Kada se sve to, samo te transparentne stvari zbroje, ispada da Srbija troši na vojni budžet 3,5% svog GDP-a, a to je pozicionira kao praktički drugu zemlju Europe po pitanju vojne potrošnje. Ukoliko sada uzmemo u obzir šta nam piše u strateškim dokumentima iz oblasti odbrane, a to je Strategija nacionalne bezbjednosti i Strategija odbrane, ne postoje nikakvi indikatori koji ukazuju na to da bi sada trebali unapređivati vojne sposobnosti, jer ne postoji opasnost od sukoba. Samim tim ulazimo u jednu paradoksalnu situaciju gdje se naš balkanski geopolitički karusel ili vrteška zaustavila upravo na obaveznom služenju vojnog roka. I uvodimo svi u regionu, počev od najava iz Prištine, najava iz Zagreba, pa sada najava iz Beograda, obavezni vojni rok. Kad je reč o avionima, dozvolite mi da kažem. Znači, poslije Hrvatske i Srbija isto pristupila takozvanom klubu Rafal, kojeg praktički ne može priuštiti. Javnosti su prezentovani troškovi isključivo nabavke aviona, ali ne i nabavke municije za te avione, nabavke obuke pilota, obuka i održavanja i generalnog remonta, gdje bi uglavnom učestvovali sa Francuskom. U jednom smislu to je dobro zato jer Srbiju povezuje sa Zapadom. U tehnološkom, pa na kraju krajeva i spoljnopolitičkom kontekstu. Međutim, ako mene lično pitate, ja bi radije onda izvršio nabavku F-35. Ako hoćemo da imamo u regionu spoljnopolitički benefit, bilo za jednu naciju, bilo za cijeli region.
Kada spomenuli ste balkanski karusel, sada spominjete vanjsko-politički benefit za regiju, stječe se dojam kao da možda zemlje Zapadnog Balkana se međusobno natječu, više nego strateški razmišljaju o nekoj zajedničkoj, mislim ne zajedničkoj obrani u onom smislu, ali o zajedničkom razmišljanju strategije o obrani.
Odavno su političari regiona shvatili kakva je matematička računica o njihovom rejtingu. Jedna od stvari su medije, ali isto tako jedna od stvari transfer popularnosti iz vojske prema njima. I zato možemo često vidjeti fotografije političara sa novonabavljenim sredstvima, ali i sa vojnim licima i posjetama kasarni i tako dalje. Upravo radi toga što ne shvataju dovoljno oblast bezbjednosti ili je ne percipiraju dovoljno ozbiljno, vidjeli smo, spomenuo sam, uvodi se obavezno vojnog roka, gdje se javnosti prezentuje da bi to moglo biti, bar u Srbiji tako, da bi to moglo biti dobro radi toga što će vojska vaspitati mladiće. Međutim, vojska nikada nije bila vaspitna ustanova, niti ima stručne sposobnosti za vaspitavanje. Ima isključivo samo za drill i vojnu obuku.
Kurt, talking about external actors, Russia is very active in this region already, but the reports say that it is expected that Russia will exploit the situation to further destabilize the region, the situation being the war and the reflection of war in Ukraine. Now, from your perspective, why does the Western Balkans remain so much vulnerable to Russian influence?
Well, I think it's a simple explanation. It's that together, the leaders in the region and the European Union have failed to find a way to really solidify strong democratic rule of law and multi-ethnic, multicultural institutions and bring those countries into the European Union. I think if we had finished the job, go back to the early 2000s or late 90s, if we had finished the job quickly, we'd be in a very different situation today and see a region that is much less vulnerable to those kind of pressures. And we still have to get this done.
NATO is sometimes referred to as a vehicle for Euro-Atlantic integration. How important do you think it is for all the countries in the region to get on board?
Well, I do think NATO membership is a critical step for everybody. I'm delighted that Montenegro made it, North Macedonia made it, others, Albania made it, others still have that opportunity ahead of them. But I think it does create an integrated sense of security. So on the one hand, every country knows they don't have anything to worry about. On the other, it then creates an integrative platform, a common way of working together so that security becomes something where, I can't say you can take it for granted, but everyone's working on the same agenda. So it drastically diminishes the risk of conflict among countries, as well as providing external security outside of NATO. So I do think that is critically important. It also, I appreciate, and it was said earlier today, the European Union has so much more when it comes to structuring rules, structuring the economy, structuring society, going well beyond what NATO does. But NATO already provides a certain common ground in terms of values and in terms of security perspectives, which is an incredible building block and eases the way for EU membership.
Nikola, nedavno ste izjavili Srbija je pod iluzijom vojne neutralnosti koju političari koriste za stjecanje popularnosti, o kojoj ste već i danas govorili, ali istovremeno ugrožavaju Srbiju. Možete li pojasniti što ste mislili pod ovim ugrožavaju?
Da. Znači, vojna neutralnost Srbije je donijeta 2007. godine u predvečerje proglašenja nezavisnog Kosova. Kao mera da u rezoluciji koju je Skupština donijela, jedna od tačaka je bila tačka 6, proglašenje nezavisnosti u odnosu na vojne saveze. Sad, da bi ta vojna neutralnost bila kredibilna, ona bi morala imati pod broj 1 historijski kontekst, pod broj 2 unutrašnji konsenzus i pod broj 3 međunarodno priznanje. Paradoks je da mi nismo ni tražili ni bilateralno ni multilateralno međunarodno priznanje vojne neutralnosti. Paradoks je isto tako što mi nemamo historijski kontekst neutralnosti, jer kao što vam je poznato, Jugoslavija je bila i članica Male Atante i prvog i drugog Balkanskog pakta, pa čak je 50. godina pregovaralo o ulasku u NATO. A nesvrstanost nemojmo brkati sa vojnom neutralnošću, dve odvojene stvari. Prema tome, vojna neutralnost u ovom trenutku, koja je po strateškim dokumentima bazirana na konceptu totalne odbrane, je potpuno virtuelna. Virtuelna jer ne podržava spoljnu politiku. Sam predsjednik Vučić je rekao da mi jesmo vojno neutralni, ali sve dok smo na europskom putu nismo i spoljno-politički neutralni. A to jednostavno, izvučeno iz konteksta, znači da nema ništa od takve vojne neutralnosti.
Ova kupnja Rafalea sada, koja je, ona također vezuje Srbiju uz Europsku uniju, uz Francusku u ovome trenutku.
Tačno, u ovom trenutku, da. To je imali smo mi i drugih kupovina, znači od Ruske federacije, čak i kupovina gdje smo isplatili sredstva za neke borbene sisteme, kao što je sistem Krasuha, borbeni sistem za elektronsko ratovanje, koji nam nije isporučen, na primjer. Ali poenta je da kroz kupovinu ovakvih sistema i kroz saradnju sa Zapadom unapređujemo pod broj 1 operativne sposobnosti, pod broj 2 vezujemo Srbiju za Zapad. Ukoliko i dalje budemo nacionalni interes kolektivnog bezbjednosnog sistema i budemo inzistirali na vojnoj neutralnosti, mi ugrožavamo bezbjednost Srbije, pre svega. Jer nemojmo zaboraviti, današnji ovakav nagli, rapidni tehnološki razvoj nikada u istoriji civilizacije nije oblikovao geopolitički kontekst globalni kao što to radi danas. Ali isto tako nije kreirao sofisticirane bezbjednosne prijetnje kao što to radi danas. Zemlje poput Srbije i poput zemalja u regionu ne mogu samostalno odgovoriti na takve bezbjednosne prijetnje. Moramo se integrisati. Moramo ući u kolektivni sistem bezbjednosti, ali i se integrisati na Zapadnom Balkanu. I koliko god to sada utopijski zvučalo, iskoristit ću ovu priliku govora na To Be Secure, ali bilo bi idealno da kreiramo, na primjer, EU Battle Group Western Balkans. To bi bilo idealno. To bi pokazao kredibilitet cijelog regiona prema integraciji u Europskoj uniji.
Od 1 do 10, koliko ima političke volje za tim?
Nema političke volje.
Okay. Kurt, could you comment on the potential implications of US withdrawal from NATO or reduce in support? Because we all here are looking ahead to the US elections and to whether Trump is going to win the second term or not, and what would it mean for the security of the Western Balkans in this respect, given all the things Trump has said during his last mandate and now during the campaign?
Yeah, so let me start just by saying that I don't, in today's world, really understand the concept of neutrality. When I see what Russia's doing with war crimes, with attacking other countries, seizing territory, abducting children, things like that, I don't see how anyone can look at that and be neutral. I can understand a little bit the concept of military non-alignment, that we're trying not to be military aligned. But even Sweden has looked at this, and Finland has looked at this and said, you know what?
It's not working anymore.
It's not working.
Yeah.
It's not working. And so I think that Serbia needs to and eventually will make a decision that it's part of the same civilization as the rest of us and will be a member of NATO, will be welcome as a member of NATO. But as long as there's hesitation over that, and in some places in Serbia, then I think it holds Serbia back. Now, as far as the U.S. goes, it's a very different phenomenon, which is President Trump has given voice to frustrations that the U.S. has done too much and pays too much of its share of defense, of overall NATO defense expenditure, and that a pattern developed of a lot of Europeans being free riders. That's what he talked about. So it wasn't, when you say threatening to get out of NATO, would the U.S. pull out of NATO, I don't think that's on the table. I don't think President Trump would do that. I don't think anyone else would do that. What he was doing was expressing frustration and demanding that European allies do more. Mm-hmm. In the 4 years since he has been president, European allies are doing more. And so the level of defense expenditure in several European countries, it went from about 3 spending more than 2% of GDP on defense to 23 or 24 today. And some of them are spending substantially more. So I was just in Poland yesterday, and Poland is on a trajectory to get to 5% of GDP on defense, which is remarkable. If former President Trump is reelected as president, I am confident you're going to hear the same thing. You're going to hear demand, 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 push European allies to carry more of the burden, but not for the purpose of weakening NATO or getting the U.S. out of it, but for the purpose of strengthening NATO and sharing the burden better.
So no withdrawal?
No.
Okay, but reduction in support, even more? The push is one thing, but the reduction of support is another.
Well, you know, I don't see that either. If you look at his first term as president, assuming he has a second term, but if you look at his first term, there was actually an increase in U.S. troop presence. There was a movement of forces further forward within NATO to where they are more needed. The Fifth Corps is now headquartered in Poland. We saw a deployment of forces in the Baltic states, which I think has proven to be very important for demonstrating to Vladimir Putin that NATO was serious about defense. So all of these things, I think, were done despite the rhetoric. And so I'm not even sure I would see a diminution of support, but rather a push for Europe to do more. One other thought, since we're covering a lot of ground here, I do think that there will be a very strong push from former President Trump, if he's elected, to try to speed up an end to the war in Ukraine. But the only way you end that war is to convince Putin it's too costly. The only reason there's a war today is because he wants a war, and he's getting away with it. So we actually have to increase support for Ukraine and lift restrictions on support for Ukraine in order to convince Putin that it's going to be too costly. We're not there today, but I hope that that is the direction that this goes in if President Trump is reelected.
Gospodine Luniću, evo, spominjali smo i druge oblike ratovanja, da tako kažemo, koji su u ovo doba nekako možda i prevalentniji. Cyber napadi nisu novosti, nisu strani ni u zemljama Zapadnog Balkana. I sada, vi ste spomenuli uvođenje obvezne vojne službe. Je li to stvarno učinkovit način ili je samo stvar politike i popularnosti koja može preći ono što ste govorili sa obrambenog sektora na političare, jer moderni izazovi poput cyber i hibridnog ratovanja daleko su izvan onoga što osnovna vojna obuka u stvari može ponuditi i obučiti ljude.
Koncept masovnih armija je koncept 19. veka. I u tom kontekstu ne možemo percipirati da bi to trebao biti interes niti jedne zemlje. Treba visoko profesionalni specijalizovan kadar u svakoj vojsci kako bi mogli odgovoriti ovakvim izazovima kakvi su danas u svijetu. Ono što bi trebalo istaći je da u regionu, ukoliko želimo da se vratimo na u regionu neki političari smatraju da bi trka u naoružanju eventualno mogla predstavljati tonu čelika u vojsci, odnosno koliko ko ima tone čelika. Međutim, današnja trka u naoružanju je mogućnost proizvođenja poluprovodnika, odnosno mikročipova. Sutra će već biti način i mogućnost upravljanja veštačkom inteligencijom. Ne znamo to još, ali pretpostavljam. Upravo se što se tiče sajbera. Čak je i deklaracija sa nedavnog NATO samita u Washingtonu u jednom članu se osvrnila na hibridne prijetnje koji mogu doseći nivo takve ugroženosti da se zemlje članice mogu pozvati na član 5. Ali nisu samo one problem. Problem su u savremenom ratovanju i uključivanje, odnosno integrisanje javno-privatnog sektora. U današnje vrijeme vidimo da mogućnosti, naravno ne na Balkanu, ali ukoliko gledamo globalno, određenih javno-privatnih multinacionalnih kompanija mogu utjecati na ishod bitaka, možda čak i ratova. I zato bi trebali da budu integrisaniji u kolektivni sistem bezbjednosti nego što su to danas. To će biti izazov za novog generalnog sekretara Marka Rutea u NATO-u, ali isto tako naravno ostaje povećavanje industrijske proizvodnje sa čim se mora izboriti.
Budućnost je već ovdje. The future is already here. Kurt, where do you see Western Balkans in terms of readiness for cyber attacks, for hybrid warfare? And let's finish with these questions and then the lunch is next.
Well, you know, we had a major cyber attack here in Montenegro not long ago, so obviously there is a high degree of vulnerability. The fact is that the whole world is vulnerable. We're vulnerable in the United States. There's no immunity to cyber attacks. It is a constant vigilance that needs to be applied. And you have to recognize that there are actors out there who will willfully go after information systems of governments, of militaries, of industry, critical infrastructure. So we just have to be constantly on.
Okay. Keep an eye on the future. Yeah, okay. Thank you so much for being a part of this panel, to the both of you and to Petar Grk, who had to leave us.